I'm Jim Check with Now Media. With me, Ian Burns, our managing editor, all the way in the nation's capital. Beautiful day here in the Okanagan. And obviously, it's White Shirt Day here in Now Media. Part of the ICNN. We're going to get that launched. You know what that is, ICNN? I haven't told you yet. The Independent Canadian News Network. There you go.
Wow. Where we wear white shirts. That's the
white
uniform.
Shirts, that's right. And no tie day today. Canadian reality versus the latest Liberal sales pitch. Are we on the menu? Canadian dollar about to slide. Oh, Joly. The snub stings, but government-funded media but government-funded media on full attack after Poilievre win, and the world is watching Canada and is aghast, puzzled, and bewildered. We're getting lots of press in the international media. All those stories and a whole lot more on the really big show, unfiltered, I guess you could say. And we got, it's a different kind of news show, but we try to cover off a lot of things. We're not doing the tech section. We're going to do tech once a week. We're not doing health. We're going to do health once a week. And we're not doing the markets, and we'll do financial markets once a week as well. And the Bitcoin show is every 2 weeks right now. So with that said, the pitch from the Liberals is, this is the first one here. The pitch from the Liberals is, together we're building a stronger future for Canada. And, you know, Mark Carney says, Canada is already the greatest country in the world, but our destiny is to make it greater still. I'm not sure who's buying that. But
I mean, all politicians say the same thing all around the world. They all say that their country is the greatest in the world, don't they? It's just kind of one of those things. Another one of the things that they say is our best days are ahead of us. You even hear people say that in places like England and you know, Europe, and I'm thinking like, no, it's not. Or like Italy, it's like, yeah, I think 2,000 years ago is probably your peak, Rome.
I watched some stuff on the engineering of Rome back in, you know, I think 100 BC, and some of the stuff they accomplished is just out of this world. Hero Alexandria.
Yeah, aqueducts.
Hero from Alexandria was one of those things that he invented a lot of things back then. We got a little speech here from Mark Carney, though, that he's going to give you some clarity as to what's going on.
As I said at the start, the world's largest economies are pursuing aggressive industrial policies, and they're restricting trade access. Canada can't afford an arms race with the US and the Europeans. And we can no longer rely on a rules-based international order for market access. As a middle power today, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. We need to be smarter. We need to focus on our key sectors. We need to create a coherent tax system. We need to train our people to master their machines. We need to build our core competencies from clean energy to compute. And we need to make ourselves the, and I mean the essential, trading partner of the United States and our allies. Not through a deal, but by being the backbone of enterprise AI, by being the most sophisticated real asset investors in the world, by being the most reliable supplier of critical minerals, and by being a clean energy superpower.
Are we on the menu?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, that'll be long forgotten, won't it? Because this was a little while ago, wasn't it, when he said this? So
I think
it doesn't count now.
This is deflecting from no deal, right? Don't worry about a deal. We're not trying to get a deal. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, what he says is there is some truth to it, though, isn't there? If you're not there, if people don't know who you are and you're not kind of at the table, you are going to get gobbled up, aren't you?
Yep. We've been talking about this for a while, too. The Canadian dollar has been holding up well because the American dollar had been sliding against all kinds of currencies. But that looks like that may be coming to an end. And here's a little clip here. We're going to play about 2 minutes of this clip here from this analyst calling for the dollar to drop, and it looks like a lot of the bets are coming off the Canadian dollar here. I'm going to play about 2 minutes of this clip here. We're going to play it in a couple of seconds here, right? So
Ahead for the Canadian dollar. Our next guest covers the world of currencies and sees a case growing on Wall Street for betting against the loonie. Dan Tobin is head of G10 FX strategy at Citi and joins us with his analysis. Dan, nice to have you with us. Walk us through some of this bearish sentiment that you're starting to see in the market when it comes to the Canadian dollar.
Yeah, so there's really three things that we would point to as a driver for some potential weakness in the loonie. First is just the correlation with the U.S. economy. Canada and the U.S. are very tightly linked, and we're going through a soft patch, or it appears like we're going to be going through a soft patch in U.S. labor market data. So that can weigh on the loonie simply just from that relationship. The second factor is that there's potential for the Bank of Canada to cut more than what markets are currently pricing. Markets are only seeing one more cut from the Bank of Canada over the next year and then reaching a terminal. We see scope for deeper cuts than that. Our Canadian economics team, despite that stickier inflation that the Bank of Canada is dealing with, sees enough scope and weakness in other parts of the economy that ultimately, as we do get some more normalization on the inflation side, we should see a more aggressive path being priced and ultimately being realized by the Bank of Canada. And then the third reason is actually the removal of something very positive. The Canadian dollar has done, I would say, okay. It's outperformed the dollar. It's underperformed a lot of other currencies. But it's outperformed the dollar because of these hedge ratio adjustments. And I'm sure we'll talk about this a little bit more in a second. But basically, it's Canadians buying back the Canadian dollar. And a lot of that flow looks like it may be running out. So suddenly, you may no longer have Canadians buying more Canadian dollars. You may have some weakness in the U.S. labor market that can then, from a contagion aspect, weigh on the Canadian loonie. And then potential, once we start seeing some normalization in inflation,
there you go. The lots of capital outflow too in this next tweet here from Dan Knight saying confidence in Canadian markets is collapsing. We're seeing that. We put out a lot of information on that, saying that that capital flows outside to other markets, especially the U.S. market, is picking up steam. And you know what, markets? We're working on this story: competition for capital, and there's a lot of competition for capital in the world, and Canada is not seen as a place where you can get certainty. Regulations are tougher, and the taxation is higher. And Doug Ford, when he met with Carney, is asking for lower taxation and less regulation, but nothing has come out of the Liberal government as yet to show any movement in that direction.
Well, you know, they said it themselves. The Liberals said it themselves. This is a gigantic emergency. You know, they were saying that the very existence of the country was at stake. Maybe that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but I mean, it's certainly true that Canada is in a very sticky situation. But it's about things like this, what Dan Knight has written here, rather than the kind of things maybe you've heard Melanie Joly and Chrystia Freeland and Mark Carney talk about in the last few months. The real fear, I think, is this specific issue, capital, and sort of what that represents. You know, foreign capital, which it represents basically belief, doesn't it? It's like faith is what that represents. Faith in Canada as a place to do business, and that is a gigantic emergency, really, isn't it? And the only way to improve confidence in Canada and the Canadian economy is to do stuff, which is what Carney promised us he would do, but stuff remains undone.
We don't even know what the stuff is yet. So that's the
exactly.
What is
the
this
list?
Stuff?
Isn't even done. List of stuff.
The list of stuff isn't even done. I did speak with a financial person the other day that handles a lot of large portfolios, and he said the amount of flow that is going to the U.S. is just people trying to move money outside the Canadian market, and including Mark Carney. 93% of his own personal wealth is held outside of Canada. And Brookfield, he moved that to the U.S. And so, I mean, he's leading by example. And so the people with capital are flowing outside. And you can't have a healthy economy without capital. And that's, you know, sorry to say, you can't run an economy on just taxing the middle class and hoping, because the middle class will flee too. And we did this story a while ago. The PBO office itself said that Canada is heading for a state where the ones with means will leave and the rest will just go out there and kill all the wildlife to survive. And Mark Carney laughed at that when he was asked about that. You remember that? He just shrugged that off and made a joke about that when the reporter.
And it's not the only one. There was also another report, wasn't there? There was the RCMP report, and then there was that report from a sort of a think tank that had been commissioned, or like a research agency that had been commissioned by the federal government. And they both said that massive declines in living standards could cause unrest in Canada. Yeah. And I've been following this story in, or this sort of, this kind of, what would you call it, genre, let's say, academic genre in the US and in England as well, where there are fears of the same sort of thing, but for slightly different reasons. But Canada, I feel, is under-discussed in that area. But yeah, I mean, the consequences are massive. We entrust these people, like Mark Carney and the ministers, we entrust them with enormous amounts of power to literally just take money off you. They're given the power to just take your money and spend it on what they see fit to spend it on. That's a huge concession, isn't it, for the citizen to make? Not to mention things like the monopoly of violence and all the rest of it that we give them. And if they then, with that power, fail to deliver even the sort of, even to maintain living standards as they are, then people are gonna, there is gonna be unrest, isn't there? People are gonna be furious about that.
And then Joly's been hiding, but here she is, popping her head up, and this one is disheartening at best. So Melanie Joly and they went down to Washington. They hired a $2,000 an hour consultant to learn how to talk American so they could learn the right-wing messaging. You know who they hired? A former Democrat.
Steve Bannon?
No, a Democrat.
Steve Bannon would be too intelligent, wouldn't it? Because he would actually know what to say to them.
And they hired a Democrat to understand GOP messaging. The thing about GOP messaging, it's basically what it is. It's, you know, what they say is what it is. There's not a lot of like hidden agendas in there. It's just what it is.
But how could you not understand that now? How could you not understand? Like, this is their enemy. This is their primary foe in the world. And they say that it's an existential threat to Canada. How could you not know that? That's almost like, that's like Winston Churchill hiring a lot of Germans to come and tell him what the Nazis are about in 1940 or something. Winston Churchill didn't need to be told that because he obviously knew that. He knew everything, or quite a lot, about the Germans. He knew what threats they posed. I know that's quite a sort of facile comparison, and I already regret using it. But if you're a leader of a country, you should know what your enemy is thinking. And I'm sure, you know, what on earth were they told? Were they told to like get some chewing tobacco and a cowboy hat and go, "Howdy, American partners," like in the Simpsons episode where the Germans come in and they pretend to be American? They're just such clowns, aren't they?
The thing about Trump and his cabinet and that, they basically tell you what they're doing. They just literally tell you what they're doing. There's no hidden agenda. When you look at some of the Democrat messaging, it's always, you're confused, right? You're just like, what did that mean? They say one thing and their actions are another thing. With the, you know, like he says he's going to stop crime in D.C. Next thing you know, there's a National Guard in D.C. I mean, it's pretty obvious what he was doing. But Melanie Joly...
there's been a lot of slime out of the GOP as well. I wouldn't be content to let them get away with that. I mean, for example, they rode the horse of the Jeffrey Epstein scandal in part to get into the White House, and now they don't want to talk about it and pretend that it's just some weird like side issue that nobody cares about. Or another example would be Israel. Like they're America first, but they can't quite explain why they also will do anything for Israel. There's a lot of hypocrisy and slime and deceit on the part of the GOP, I would say. But this is just understanding the messaging. So understanding the Trump message. I mean, I almost feel like if you've been reading newspapers for the last few years, or even just Donald Trump's tweets, you should know that. You know, that's kind of like one of the more important cultural phenomena of the last 10 years. How do you not know that?
So if we look at this another way, this is how to win friends. Again, consultants. Pay them $2,000 an hour. And they're your best friend while they're getting the $2,000 an hour. When you cut off the money supply, they don't want to talk to you. It's basically what it is.
$2,000 an hour as well. Like, I'm definitely in the wrong business. I could have given them 10 times better advice, and I would have charged just $1,000 an hour. Maybe that's what I should do. Start my own consultancy.
I think you just got to put your name in there to Joly. We got a little clip here from Melanie Joly. She's got a lot to say here. Let's hear what Melanie has to say. Well, maybe. We're going to get a clip here.
A little bit less verbose than usual.
For the strategy, we're taking decisions and making early moves.
Thank you. And with respect to your conversations with Saab, can you just give us
That's
a
the
sense
wrong
of
part of the video.
whether the
clip there, 2336 there. Let's see if you can cue that up there.
But the reason that we're looking at this, the reason this is interesting, is because she's asked good questions. Okay, they've changed. CPAC sometimes does this where they change. I'll give you a new timestamp. Hold on.
Yeah, so she's going to talk about the EV mandate, and the other one, what is she talking about? As soon as we get the right timestamp there.
It's canola. That's what I found so interesting. She was asked about the double standard with canola. Yeah. Okay, so 4 minutes and 57 seconds. CPAC, when they do these live broadcasts, they sometimes change them so that they cut out a lot of the beginning bit where it says, well, it's at the beginning, it's like waiting for whatever. So 4:57, Rommel.
Let's see if we can get this now.
And just listen, like, how often do you hear this kind of question?
For taking our questions. Hi. Why hasn't the government announced supports for the canola industry? Are you not opening yourself up to criticism from the likes of Premier Mo and others that you're choosing EVs over canola?
I think that this is not a choice between one or the other. The question is, we will be there to support our canola industry. We will be there to support our farmers. And I know that the Prime Minister and the Minister of Agriculture have been working together to address this issue.
Do you believe that it's still a good idea to go all in on EVs? And what evidence do you have that all of the Canadian taxpayer money that's been handed over to corporations or will be is working?
So when you look at what's going on internationally, we know that the auto sector is going through a very important change, and there's lots of electric vehicles that are being built internationally. So we know that we need to help our industry innovate. Now, we know that the auto sector is right now bearing the brunt of the tariffs from the US administration. We will be there to support the auto sector. I've been in contact with all the Canadian CEOs of all the different plants across the country. We will be there to support the workers. I've been in contact also with many of their union leaders, and we will be there to make sure that they can continue to innovate while they're in a very stressful business environment. And so we know that we can help them continue to invest, and we won't let the sector down. So I'm very pragmatic. I know that we have investments on the electric vehicle side, and meanwhile, we're dealing with trade tensions, and we know that we can address these two issues together.
Prochaine question, Boris Proux, la parole est à vous.
Yeah.
That was just the contrast there. Talking about EVs, she is just like, her eyes light up. She can't wait to talk about how great it is to give them tens of billions of dollars to fail. She's just like, yeah, innovation, and we're gonna help them. We're gonna make sure that they have everything they need, the union, the workers, everything. But then canola, it's like, we like canola. Next question.
I have two questions from there. One is the background. So does every MP display their provincial flag behind them as well, or is it just Melanie Joly that displays the provincial flag as well as the Canadian flag behind them?
That was the Finnish flag because she's on a junket to Finland. She's doing Finnish stuff. Yeah.
I thought it was.
No, the Quebec one has got more blue on it.
There you go. The second question is, is this EV mandate. There's not a lot of truth to it. And she says, we've been talking to the auto manufacturers across Canada. What do you mean across Canada? Where? Ontario and Quebec. What across Canada?
Yeah, and even then, let's be honest, Detroit is the city you should be talking about. That's the Michigan and Washington, D.C. That's where the real power is for these companies.
Across Canada, no.
Or Tokyo.
And I mean, many people, including I drive an electric vehicle and I believe in electric vehicles, but I also know that the EV mandate is killing the auto sector. And the 5 CEOs she's talking about have asked for it to be removed because they won't survive. Right now, Ford and GM are making decisions as to where to manufacture vehicles. And if Canada keeps that EV mandate, they're going to close plants here in Canada. There's no doubt about it, because they don't have an EV mandate in the United States. And most of these auto manufacturers are investing still in gasoline cars. And most of them can't make a decent EV. Do the math, Melanie.
And the thing is, I mean, it's even beyond the specifics of just this sector. I mean, you don't even have to get too deep into the fact that it's about cars and all the rest of it. I think what's really important here is the government has taken tens of billions of taxpayers' dollars and made an enormous bet, put it all on red on the roulette table, and it looks like they're not going to win this bet. And by them, I mean we aren't going to win this bet. We are going to lose this bet. That's the big thing. If you're going to go all in on a bet, you better get it right, especially when it's not your money.
So if they were serious about the EV mandate and climate change and all that, they would take all this corporate welfare they have that they've doled out to Honda, which now delayed their plant, and they Northvolt and Line and all these things that have failed, and they would take that and they would call up Elon Musk and beg him to bring a Tesla plant here to Canada and give him all that corporate welfare to try to induce him to come here, because that's the only EV worth buying right now. So, but they're not serious.
Well, it's certainly the most successful EV company, but it's also the one company that they despise and have name dropped, like literally said, we won't give money to this company because we hate this company. I mean,
well, they have attacked him. They've attacked him endlessly, right? So this EV mandate is just it's a corporate welfare. They've given billions of dollars to companies that have fled Canada and taken the money and run. And they continue to do the same thing and continue to do it. And again, the 5 CEOs she's talking about have said drop the EV mandate. But she talks to them all the time and that they're all in on this, didn't she? Did she say that she's trying to convince these 5 CEOs that they need to stay in Canada? No. Absolutely not.
It just seems like, honestly, the train went off the tracks a few months ago. And it doesn't even seem like the driver, which is Melanie Joly, or one of the drivers, it doesn't even seem like she's trying to get it back on the tracks. She's talking as if the train is still going fine.
I mean,
it's like not acknowledging that the train isn't even on the tracks anymore. Like, this is a complete disaster.
Our theme for this show today is the liberal messaging versus the Canadian reality. And then here's a prime example of it. The liberal messaging is completely different from the Canadian reality.
Yeah, but just to go back to the viability of these industries, we can't emphasize enough that EV technology is a gamble. I know you're a massive advocate of it, and I am too. I think it's very cool. Not that I have one, but it's obviously really, really cool technology. But as things stand, it's a gamble, and massive amounts of money have been spent on it to try and make it work. It doesn't look like it's going to work, at least not in the Canadian context. But then look at Sylvain Charlebois here, aka the food professor, who's written this column a few days ago. He's talking about the canola industry, and he mentions that it's worth $43 billion every year. That's a Canadian invention, canola, and it's also, it's in the ground, and it's quite a sort of spectacularly successful sector of the agricultural economy. It's there in Saskatchewan. They're experts at producing it. The supply lines are great, and this is the industry or sector or whatever that the Canadian government has chosen to sacrifice for EVs, because it really is that simple. The Chinese, as Charlebois emphasizes here, the Chinese don't want Canada to punish China's EV industry. Canada's doing that to be friends with the US and to protect this sheltered EV industry in Canada. It really is that simple. It's one or the other, and they've chosen EVs, and it's kind of Charles Bois just sort of lays it out here, how foolish that seems, at least to him, as in terms of the nature of that gamble.
Well, they've been really silent on canola. I mean, that question is one of the first questions that a reporter actually asked of a federal liberal. And, you know, like they finally, and we get an answer that is really nothing, right? We got a, oh yeah, we like canola. I mean, it meant
It was
nothing,
an insult.
Right? Where's
it was an insult. Just the prime minister's looking into that. What? Shut up.
It sounded exactly like Patty Hadju there, the labor minister, and saying we're going to launch a probe. You don't need a probe. It was common knowledge. And this is the same thing. We're looking into the canola thing. This has been going on. So how long has Scott Moe been bringing this to people's attention? What, 3 months now, at least?
Well, it even happened during the Trudeau time where canola was targeted. Canola is it's a bit of a weak point, obviously, because the Chinese are such big buyers of it. Wow. But this has been on the menu for a while to deal with. And the reality is that the Liberals, I mean, I can't help but be a cynic here and say that the Liberals look at an electoral map and then they superimpose canola production on top of that and say, all right, none of those are our seats. Nobody's going to vote for us. None of these canola people would ever vote for the Liberal Party. See you later then. Let's just worry about Quebec and Ontario where the cars are.
Maybe they can grow cars like Carhenge there.
But I just think this is crazy. This is, you know, this is such a as he refers to it here, like the headline is, why are we trading our bread basket for a battery pack? I just feel, we've mentioned this a lot of times, Canada's like secret weapon in many ways is literally the province of Saskatchewan. It is an amazingly blessed part of Canada. It's got so many resources, and it's like hard resources. It's not like services and silly things like that. It's like the real deal. Saskatchewan has so much, and it just seems like the Canadian sort of elite or the ruling class, they don't understand that, or they just have contempt for Saskatchewan, and it's like, this is like real hard power that they have as well. This is how the Chinese, you know, make food with this. This is very significant. And obviously there's wheat as well, and it just seems to me such a shame that it's not recognized how valuable this industry or this sector is to Canada. Two of the biggest and the biggest needs that most human beings need is food and shelter. That's, you know, like the two things. If you're dropped off into the woods, food and shelter. And the thing you need to make it with is energy. And Saskatchewan is food, and it has energy, right? And it has those ingredients. And you're right, it's not just services, because I think a lot of the Liberals and NDP want to rely on services. But you need the hard goods to sell to somebody else. It's really hard to sell service, especially from Canada, because we don't have like big tech companies and all that kind of stuff. We have the raw goods. You know, Carney said it in his speech. We have the raw goods, yet we don't have the willingness to sell them or stand up for them, because canola is a huge thing. Like, you know, like he's saying in this article. I guess because it's like unfashionable. It's not glamorous. It's just fields full of rapeseed. You know, that's basically what canola is. And I feel like they don't want anything to do with that. People like Melanie Joly, it's like, what? Like farming? Like, go away.
And Scott Moe has said it several times, canola markets are very, very, very hard to develop. It's not like you can phone up someone and say, hey, you want to buy $43 billion worth of canola today? These are hard markets to develop. They're hard to get.
But it's also, as well, we should emphasize, this isn't just like digging into the ground and putting it in a box and selling it. This actually is value added, because it was invented, wasn't it, by Canadians. That's why it's called Canada Oil or canola. It's an invention. It's a creation of the Canadian people. It's representative of Canadian ingenuity and the sort of Canadian genius in a way, which is not really the case with EVs or cars in general. You know, it's not Canadians that are innovating in the car world. They're just you know, assembling Hondas and things like that, like Japanese cars.
It's an ideology thing for them, the EV thing. It's their flag, and that's, you know, the EV ideology, because it's not serious. Because most of the people I talk to that have you know, like basically, you know, like a pope or a cardinal of the climate religion, I ask them if they watched Elon Musk's master plan, and they say no. So they're not serious. They're not serious.
Well, I do feel like it is ideology, but I feel like it's also like patronage there's a lot of money tied in this, and a lot of votes, and a lot of political support, and it's kind of it's a big mess, and it's a mixture of money and ideology, I think. And at this point, that's the only possible explanation, isn't it, for why they won't sacrifice the EV mandate, because they think that that's necessary to prop up this sector that they've put loads of money into. They want to try and effectively want to try and force the consumer to buy the product that they've gambled on, so that it doesn't look like a failure. But obviously, as you've pointed out, and as many other people have pointed out, the mandate, it will kill the sector by itself.
And then a few of the readers point this out, and we're quite familiar with it. Potash is one of the cards they can use against the Trump administration. Everybody wants potash because that's
uranium, yeah.
And uranium in Denison, and Cameco, one of the world's largest miners, Cameco, located in Saskatchewan, and Denison is one of those mid-tier stocks that's kind of going from an exploration stock to a producer. So there's a couple of really big companies in Saskatchewan there. And especially, like Saskatchewan, rich in so many things, and just the only thing they're not rich in is a lot of people. The population there is fairly light.
Put it that way as well.
Votes. Exactly, you said that where they're weak is in the votes, right?
Yeah. But this is like, sorry, just I know we've been going on a while, but I've seen something similar in the discussion about Russia in the Ukraine war, where people look at Russia's GDP. And they laugh at it and they say, oh, it's the size of Italy's GDP. It's like, how on earth could this country pose a challenge to anybody? But that's the thing with Russia. It's not so much about the services. It's not so much about like random little companies that deliver things to you, or like software companies or whatever. With Russia, the reason they've survived in this war is because they have like 5 or 6 Saskatchewans, don't they? They've got all of these raw materials, and that doesn't necessarily look so good in the GDP figures, but it means that they can live by themselves, just about. They can feed themselves, and they can power themselves, and they can send an army off and feed it and look after it. Like, that's unquantifiable. It's almost like beyond value, that, isn't it? And yet the attitude in Canada is to completely ignore that sort of strategic asset.
One of the quotes here is, try driving an EV in -40. I'd say I do drive an EV in -40. It does use a little bit more battery, but they work quite well. That the Teslas do anyway. But there's many, the charging infrastructure is not built out in Canada. Neither is the ability to buy that many EVs. It's just they don't make enough EVs, and there's a lot of reasons for Canada not to adopt this thing. And people should buy EVs because they choose to buy EVs, not because somebody forced you to buy EVs. And let's move on though. There's an editorial at the Western Standard put out there, and again, the media is silent on this. Canada shut out Carney's absence in Washington, a national humiliation. You and I have said stuff about, we don't get to go to the court. We don't get to talk to Mark Carney, because that's the first question I would ask. What are your thoughts on not being invited to Washington? We talked about it yesterday. And then Brian Lilly put this out. This is from Norman Spector. Back in the day, the PM Canada would be invited by the President of the United States to balance the Europeans out. And instead, we talked about this yesterday. A guy from Finland showed up instead because he said they had a large border with Russia. That's the reason he's there. And it turns out we have a large border with Russia as well. But again.
Well, it is a massive snub. I think what he means here, this Norman Spector person, when he's talking about balancing out the Europeans, is because Canada kind of used to be like a halfway point, didn't it, between the US and Europe? But now, as we've seen with the Liberals, particularly Mark Carney and Justin Trudeau, apparently now Canada is just European. So in that sense, what value is Canada to the US, which is the convener of things like this and is the indispensable participant? And look at that. It kind of makes sense why they would reject Canada. It's like, well, what have you got to offer? You're just going to say what the Europeans are going to say.
And here's the government-funded media riding to the rescue. Ukraine would like to see Canada actively participating, says, a diplomat, a top diplomat says that, right? Because Canada's doled out lots of cash. Because if you look at this next slide here, Canada has given $20 billion, and Germany $33 billion, France $11, and Canada not at the table there. And
Italy given an absolute pittance there, and yet Giorgia Meloni's been like the star of the show, hasn't she, at this conference?
Her eye rolls have got to be like the best, right? If you're looking for memes, when the German
even that picture there, where she's like,
I think that picture that I've seen the meme, just like I was told Elon was going to be here. I think that has been a meme like that there, and But if you look at this picture, I texted it to you yesterday. If you look at this picture, all sat around the Donald Trump's desk, the resolution desk, and then if you look back in Trump's first term, it was Angela Merkel that was standing over Trump, and all the Europeans behind her, because they were all again Trump, as George Bush would have put it, either you're with me or again me. And now it's a completely different thing. Mark Rutte, the head of NATO, definitely, I guess, is one of the bigger supporters of Donald Trump, and that.
Yeah, it's one way of putting it. Biggest sycophants. I would say that image as well of Angela Merkel and all the rest of them trying to like impose themselves on Trump. What's very interesting about that is Shinzo Abe, the now late, he was assassinated, wasn't he? But the old Japanese leader, he's there with Trump. He's like protecting Trump. It's quite an interesting.
Yeah, it was him and Trump. That was it. And back in the day, now it's completely different. Too bad he's not here to witness the change. And then Holly Doan put out this story of Blacklocks here. The union asked the federal judge to cite the minister for unlawful misuse of her powers to quash the legal strike by 10,500 Air Canada flight attendants. And so she's coming under some heat here. And in issuing her direction, they say she precluded the union's ability to exercise its legal right to strike and its only legal means of asserting and leveraging economic power within the scheme of Canada Labour Code. And in doing so, disregarded and undermined, effectively nullified the constitutional right to strike held by the union and its members. Because she invoked that Section 107 of the code like almost immediately when they went on strike, right? And
Which is something that her predecessors have also done or been accused of doing, gone too quick.
And it's just they looked in this thing because they set a record 8 times, the Liberals did, by invoking Section 107. It's just like, what do you do when people aren't listening? Oh, there you go, Section 107. Or, Part 2, freeze their bank accounts. And they did threaten them even with jail, right? They got the media to start going and talking about some people would go to jail. And there you go. So hopefully they take this further, and then these...
but this is a huge scandal, I think. This is a huge story. You wouldn't know it looking at CBC and all the rest of the sort of... government-aligned media. But this is a mega story, I think. The federal government of Canada has instructed, used a law, instructed people to do something, That's like the king says, do this. And they actually literally did it in the king's name. And then the people just ignored it. And then they won. The people won. So the government not only tried to issue an order, and that it was then ignored, but then the people who ignored it have won, and they're victorious now. So I think this is a massive scandal. This is like a collapse of state power. This is state failure. It's an attempt to do something. They clearly said, this is what we want to happen. And people just said, no, we don't care. We're just going to ignore you. That's huge. I mean, how weak is this government? This is a major story.
The public opinion caused them to fold. But here's the thing. Had you, on Saturday, just 3 hours into lawful picketing by flight attendants, banned the strike under Section 107. 3 hours. 3 hours. That's how much time they gave them, right? The clause allows the Labour Minister to do such things, seems likely to maintain or secure industrial peace. And the strike ban had the effect of undermining collective bargaining. That's what CUPE wrote to the court. It said, had you exceeded her powers and failed to interpret Section 107 in a manner consistent with the charter rights, said that application, due to a record, and this is it, due to a record of recent interventions by the minister ordering the end of strikes and lockouts pursuant to Section 107, Air Canada ceased bargaining at August 12th. Yeah, so they just we're going to get forced back anyway. And instead shifted its focus to requesting government intervention to stop the legal collective bargaining process, including the anticipated legal strike from proceeding. And that's what the CUPE application says. On August 12th, Air Canada presented a detailed brief to the minister requesting that the minister intervene and preemptively order that the union and its members not be permitted to exercise their legal and constitutional right to strike. This is, like you say, a massive scandal.
If this had, it's easy to say this, but if something like this had happened, you could say Stephen Harper as an example. Can you imagine the circus that would be following him here, saying are you going to resign? You're the prime minister. Your government said do something. People said no. and nothing has happened. What's the point of being in government then? You know, like, how weak are you? But imagine if like Trump or somebody had done this kind of thing.
Oh, yeah. We have an interview this morning. Steve is going to be interviewing a former union boss for these QP workers here. So we're going to get that interview with that person here. And yeah, so we'll have that interview up. That story should be up later today. And we've done it. We actually went out to the airport. That video is online as well. We went out there and interviewed a few of the striking Air Canada flight attendants as well.
By the way, just to interrupt briefly, bit of breaking news from the Canadian Press has interviewed Tim Hodgson, Natural Resources Minister, who's now revealed that the announcements about major projects will start coming in the fall. So that's when the list, that's when the
announcement of the announcement.
Some of the list will be revealed.
An announcement of the announcement. And is Tim still wearing his sunglasses in his announcement of the announcement?
Of course, the image on their website is him in sunglasses with his Matrix Agent Smith sunglasses. I mean, come on.
Yeah, announcement of the announcement. Sounds like a Monty Python skit. It actually does. We're going to announce the announcement. Today is a big day. We're about to announce that we're going to announce on the day that we announce the announcement of the announcement.
We're going to start announcing the announcement. Yeah, it's just... And this as well, from a government, it wouldn't even be that big of a deal if they hadn't said to us that we have to go at like warp speed. We have to go at lightning speed now. And then promptly allow MPs to go on their summer vacations and do nothing for months and then not announce any projects. But I guess, what is the fall? Is that November? Is that early December? Like, when are we going to hear this? Such a vague way to describe it as well.
Yes, yes, yes. Another one here from Holiday and Blacklocks. Feds report retail startups in Canada down by a fifth since pandemic, and that follows a 12% rise in bankruptcies to levels not seen since the 2008 financial panic. And this is in a report. Again, the government seems to be doing all these reports that the mainstream media or the government-funded media seems to ignore. But Holly Dona Blacklocks, you know, who has been accused of yellow journalism, apparently, it seems to find that she is the bane of many of these. She doesn't take any funding from the government, zero. And she just writes her stuff just like us.
But she also takes her responsibility as a journalist seriously, which is, as we've said many times, hold power to account. That's it in a nutshell. You look at what she puts out there, I think you can say she holds power to account, doesn't she? Yeah. Then you look at CBC, CTV, and all the rest of them. Do they hold power to account?
We're going to show you what they do.
Maybe sometimes they do.
We're going to show you what they do later on here. The report is one of the first to examine the impact of COVID on entrepreneurship and company creation in Canada. COVID-19 hindered business creation. Obviously, that was pretty obvious, right? But the supports were really for the big box stores during COVID, right? We've seen all the small stores forced to close, and the big box stuff stayed open. Bankruptcies last year totaled almost 150,000, 148,483, a 12% increase from 2023. And then that in the peak was 158,000 in the 2008 financial panic. But one of the biggest things that people are citing is access to financing. Loan defaults in the pandemic series of years of 2021, 2020, 21, 22 totaled 220 million. By comparison, loan defaults after the 2008 financial crisis cost taxpayers 176 million. With the onset of the pandemic, there was a substantial increase in the claims processed. This is access to financing, which is really, it's tough right now to get capital, right? Banks are tightened up.
And I'm sure that's not helped by Tiff Macklem's decision to constantly hold fire.
And then here we go with the Liberal and the Liberal-funded media on the attack after Poilievre's win. This guy, Scott Reid, he's like, you have to go and watch. I think we played his clip where he just like went, I put it on my LinkedIn and we can go watch it, where he went, I think he said, he did like a 2-minute rant, and I think he used the F word like a million times when he accused these people like Jeff Evely and them of exercising their charter rights. But here's a little clip of him dissecting Poilievre's win here.
TV News political commentator Scott Reid in the conversation. Scott, great to see you this afternoon. Thanks for your time. This is one big hurdle crossed now for Pierre Poilievre, who heads for the House of Commons. Your thoughts on this widely expected victory for the Conservative leader?
No surprises. He was always going to win this riding. It was, as you said, selected because it is the safest of safe ridings for Conservative. Gets him into the House of Commons. And frankly, from a political standpoint, it sets up the sequel. It sets up the rematch in the next election, whenever it's going to be held, between Pierre Poilievre and Mark Carney. And I think that's what really the significance is. We're going to see these two now locked in combat politically in the fall, through the winter, maybe through this year and into next, but eventually we're going to see them go toe-to-toe again at the ballot box.
Let's talk about that. You know, how do you see Pierre Poilievre take on this role now once again as a leader of the opposition in the House of Commons? Because now he's going to be up against a prime minister who still enjoys a decent amount of popularity versus the predecessor, Justin Trudeau.
But now he has to do something he hasn't had to do before. Yeah. He has to make the case for change. Pierre Poilievre, since he became the Conservative leader, had change at his back. It was his great ace card against Justin Trudeau. And of course, when that change occurred, he couldn't seem to manage those movements and push them toward his favor. And suddenly Mark Carney became the change agent and he was left behind. So now he's going to have to create the demand for change. Right now, Carney's polling ahead of Poilievre personally in terms of leadership. Right now, the Liberal Party and the Liberal government are polling ahead of the Conservative Party. So mission number one for Pierre Poilievre is to change that, to create a sense of demand for change across the country.
I don't think I agree with that analysis on, I mean, most of what he says there I think is accurate and true, but I don't agree with what he says about change. I think that ignores the elephant in the room, really, doesn't it? Like, Poilievre did promise change. Carney took a few of those ideas and kind of watered them down and gave the impression of change. But really, Carney was all about, Carney, if anything, was about the past rather than the future, rather than progress. It was about Mike Myers and him talking about the 90s and stuff like that, and anti-Americanism and how Trump is a buffoon and all the rest of it. Yeah, that was what the election was about. It wasn't, if it was just about change, Poilievre would have won. We've seen that already. When you pull out the Trump aspect of the election, people would have backed Poilievre because he did actually have a platform. Whether or not he would have implemented it is another question. But he did have a platform that represented change, unlike the Liberals. And we're seeing now, like, what's changed exactly? Not very much.
And then this other CBC piece here is Poilievre against the EV mandate, and then so CBC is fact checking here right away. So let's play this small clip here.
Conservatives are launching a massive nationwide campaign to stop Mark Carney's ban on gas-powered vehicles.
That's Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre on a Saskatchewan farm. He's referring to a ban on gas vehicles imposed by the Liberal government in Canada. But is a ban really looming overhead? Well, not exactly. Canada is introducing sales targets for new vehicles. The goal is that 100% of small cars, trucks, and SUVs sold will be zero emission by 2035. But it won't be an all-out ban on gas vehicles. We have no reason to believe that cars already on the road will be impacted at all. So you can keep driving the gas vehicle you already own.
On January 1st, the Carney mandate, the Carney ban on your gas vehicle, will begin to be phased in. It will require 20% of dealership sales to be electric, and any car sold above that quota will pay a $20,000 tax.
The first interim target is for 20% of new vehicle sales to be EVs by 2026. So this is partly true. But in the plan on EVs, there's no mention of a $20,000 tax for not hitting quotas.
Could that run on an electric battery? How could you move your grain to markets? How could you do the regular work that's required to have a pickup truck in minus 40-degree weather in February? It is simply not possible.
Farm equipment like Poilievre was referring to in that clip, whether it's tractors or grain trucks, isn't part of the EV conversation right now. The targets only apply to new light-duty.
I don't think you recognize the reporter there, do you?
No, do you?
Alex Saladuca. She used to be our news director a number of years ago.
Oh, wow. Now she's batting for the Liberal Party.
I'm gonna have to message Alex and say, What's that?
She wasn't. It's not like she was lying there.
No.
Those aren't lies. It's
No.
just. It's not. It's playing the game in a fairly mischievous fashion. I would say.
It's being very selective in how you pull this out, right? Because you can pull threads, right? And it's pulling.
But also,
threads.
Poilievre, obviously, he uses quite colourful language because he's a politician. Yeah. And you know, he's very much that kind of politician as well. He tries to use like folksy language and metaphors and tries to get across points in a very clear way. So when he says gas car ban, obviously they're not going to come round and seize your 1980 Volvo or something like that because it runs on gas.
Production of new cars. It's a ban on.
Which is still a ban, and it's also an effective. As somebody here has commented straight away on YouTube, that it's going to send the used market, which is already mad, but it's going to send the used market insane. Not everybody is going to be able to buy an EV, so it's just a bit cheeky of her to do that, even though she wasn't lying or anything like that. But it's quite a cheeky way to look at it, isn't it? And it's not a trying even to understand what Poilievre's trying to say. It's just like slapping it down.
My bigger point here would be Alex. Like, she's a good reporter. She did a really big story for us way back when, and it got national attention. Actually, it got U.S. ambassadors and everything. We did a story on a biker that crossed into the United States, and it was a really big story. And is that they don't fact check. Like, why doesn't she do the same thing for Melanie Joly that we just watched the clip there? You could do this all day long with the Liberals, right? Because it just seems to be.
And more than that, you probably should. That's probably what you should spend your time on exclusively, because Pierre Poilievre doesn't really have any power. Melanie Joly is vastly more powerful than Pierre Poilievre is.
Exactly.
So really, you should be, or Champagne or whoever. That's really who you should be scrutinizing. Pierre Poilievre is just a critic. You know, that's all. He's an opposition leader. He's an outsider. Yeah. Obviously, he has a certain amount of power, and he definitely should be scrutinized. But really, if you're going to get your magnifying glass out, you should be pointing at the people who actually have real power.
And then we got one more clip here for, when they went after Pierre. They seem to be, when they get their story assignments, when they pitch them, is like, let's go after Melanie Joly. Nope. Let's go after Pierre. Yes, let's do that story. let's play this clip here. Yeah, just keep going though. The music should stop any second here. There you go.
Has been the privilege of my life.
The Conservative leader garnering a 70% margin of victory, similar numbers to what former MP Damien Currick got in the Alberta riding of Battle River Crowfoot.
Having Pierre represent us in this region will be a gift.
Currick stepping down to allow the Conservative leader to run, parachuting Poilievre into one of the safest blue seats in Canada. Monday night's win, likely Poilievre's political highlight of a disastrous 2025.
That's good. There you go, just another another story, right?
Yeah, quite interesting. I mean, it's an opportunity. If you're interested in balance, it's an opportunity to say, just like Mark Carney, Pierre Poilievre has been parachuted into a safe riding.
Right, that'd be the fair way to say it.
In the case of Mark Carney, the incumbent wasn't asked. He was just kicked out. It was just like, get out of here, you loser. Mark Carney's coming in.
He didn't even offer it up. In this case, Damien Currick offered it up. In the other case, so maybe that's what I mean. It's very biased, and it's very much, they don't say, no different than Mark Carney. And if they want to go after, like CBC, like, let's just watch over the next few days who goes after Patty Hadjou. And just listen for the crickets, right? Listen for the crickets. And this one here is a story breaking across Canada here, and then a lot of people upset because a man broke into a house and had a weapon, and then the homeowner wrestled him and caused some serious harm to the person. And guess who got charged? Well, they both got charged, but the homeowner did as well. And then we have this clip here from Ron Chisner that kind of explains it here. And let's just play this clip here.
This story has been blowing up on social media, and a lot of people have commented or DM'd me asking me how this could happen. So here it is. In Lindsay, Ontario, a 44-year-old man was sleeping in his apartment when he woke up at 3 in the morning to find a 41-year-old intruder inside. A fight broke out. The intruder, who was already wanted by police, ended up with life-threatening injuries and had to be airlifted to a Toronto trauma center. Now, both men are charged. The homeowner is facing aggravated assault and assault with a weapon. The intruder is facing break and enter, possession of a weapon for a dangerous purpose, mischief, and probation violations. He's out on probation, surprise, surprise. So why is the victim charged? Well, here's why Canada's laws are very different from the US. Down there, they've got the castle doctrine. Your home is your castle. You can use force, even deadly force, to defend it, and you don't have to retreat. In Canada, we don't have that. Our system comes from English common law, and under sections 34 and 35 of the Criminal Code, you can defend yourself and your property, but the force has to be reasonable in the circumstances. And reasonable isn't up to you in that moment. It's judged afterwards by the police, prosecutors, and courts. Deadly force just to protect property is not considered reasonable here. That's why the homeowner got charged, because in Canada, if the Crown thinks you went one step too far, you could be treated like the criminal, even when you're the one who woke up to a stranger standing in your home. And this is where Canadians are losing patience. Just check the comments. We've got repeat offenders walking free on bail, victims being dragged through the system, and now we've got a man charged.
Yeah. So yeah, in Florida, we got a parade, and in Canada, you get charged.
I mean, I've always found that peculiar, and I'm glad that he said that, because otherwise that's what I would have said, that's the reason this has happened, as probably a lot of people are already aware. But the thing I always find hard is, how can you have that expectation of someone who literally opens their eyes in the middle of the night, they've been asleep, and they see somebody with a weapon in their home, and who are there to do no good? How can you expect that person to then think, all right, I'm gonna get rid of this dude, I'm gonna subdue this person, however, I'm gonna make sure that I don't take it too far? Like, who thinks like that? When you wake up and somebody stood there with a weapon in your house, who is it that can think, oh yeah, right, I'm gonna get him down here, but I just need to make sure, no, I'll not do that punch, because that would be too far, so maybe I'll just do a slap. It's like, what the hell are you talking about? What a load of cobblers. What a load of nonsense that is. And it's why, there used to be in France, famously, there used to be something called a crime of passion. And that was usually like if a man came home and his wife was having it off with another man, then the court would show a certain amount of leniency if he did something like beat that person up or even kill them. And I just think, obviously, that's a little bit silly and we sort of laugh about that. But you need to recognize that we are animals, we're human beings. And if somebody does something as extreme as break into our homes with a weapon and the intention to do no good, we're not going to be able to approach that rationally, are we? We're just it's a life or death matter then. It's fight or flight, literally.
So I think that the advice then would be, if you and your wife were sleeping in bed and somebody broke in, you would want to nudge her and say, can you go deal with that? Because then it'll look like it's lesser force being used against them. And and then I got to get up early. I don't know. It's ridiculous. Moving on.
Yeah, though. I mean, it's not fair or reasonable, is it? And I mean, I feel like a sort of a zoologist would show more understanding and sympathy in a situation like this, where they'd say, and you get this, don't you? When a bear kills someone, it's like, oh well, this bear was really stressed. It wasn't acting rationally. It's like, why don't you apply that logic to a bloody human being?
And then some good news. Jagmeet Singh is done with the NDP, and then here's Elizabeth May saying that she won't lead her party into the next election. And she said that they'll be looking to elect a new leader or co-leaders. How do you have co-leaders when sometimes you only have one seat?
The Greens love that, don't they? They absolutely love that.
And then I interviewed yesterday, the lawyer that's representing from the Justice Center of Constitutional Freedoms there, on Jeff Evely there. And this is the Daily Mail. We'll go back. The Daily Mail put out a piece here saying, War Heroes jaw-dropping $29,000 fine proves Canada can't see the forest for the trees. You got to watch the video I did with the lawyer there.
Cheeky Daily Mail. They've got a policy which I see is still in effect. It comes from the very top editorial ivory tower, which says always choose the highest number. So that's why they've done Canadian dollars here on the US website, because that's the high number. The other one is if it's Fahrenheit and if you've got an option between Fahrenheit and Celsius, always choose always choose the top one, the bigger number.
And then from Delhi, the Hindustan Times, they use the exact figure, 28,872 in Canadian. They didn't say Canadian though. Can't believe this is obviously an opinion piece. The dystopian world Canada's become, and you can go on Now Media, and I think the story will be up today too. And I did interview Chris Fleury there. He's representing Jeff Evely, and they want to go to court, and usually the court will drop the case before they get to court. That's their whole thing, because they want to use these exorbitant fines to kind of like scare people. But they've also asked for a judicial review so they can get some court time, because last time Jeff tried to go to court on a similar thing in 2003, I believe it was, or 13. Can't remember exactly. It's in the video. You can watch it. The judge tossed it out and said there was no fine, so there's no standing, so he couldn't pursue. So he wanted to make sure he had a fine this time. And then this one here, just
he's playing the long game.
And this one here, Godsod, they're putting out Canada as a fallen country, just to kind of go along with some of that stuff. And then here's a clip here from talking about Canada. We'll play a real small clip of this.
Canada. I think we have to keep looking at Canada now as the puppet for the WEF. Anything they want to try is happening right across the border from us. That is what they want for the whole world. You have to recognize this is not an anomaly. It is not going away. They are going to make it so that one day we are dipped down into a vat of jelly like the Matrix. We are, vicariously experiencing the Grand Canyon I just saw because Kim Kardashian is going to take a trip down there sponsored by CNN, and that's the only way you get to see this space. I'm serious, folks. This is getting really scary, and it's really close to our border. And
there you go. Lots of opinions on Canada, but in Canada, if you watch the government-funded media, it's and the Liberals will tell you this is the greatest country in the world.
But it's sad. But it's just like every other subject in the US. It's now become Republican or Democrat, right or left, hasn't it? And Canada's joined the list now. So in the US, if you're on the left, you probably like Canada, and if you're on the right, you hate it. It's bad news for us, anyway.
And Pierre Poilievre busy. Here's Rob Shaw, reporter here in British Columbia, saying Pierre Poilievre reiterating his call for the BC government to scrap that deal with China. And again, another one that Mark Carney has been totally silent on, that $1 billion loan, Canada Infrastructure Bank, $1 billion loan that the BC NDP used for the $4 billion contract to build ferries with China, while China slapped Canada with those canola tariffs. Makes no sense. Yeah. Makes zero sense. And where's the reporters asking? Where's Alex Saladuca? Maybe ask that question. To be fair, Alex.
Yeah, that would be a nice one, wouldn't it? That'd be it's a necessary question. And what a shame that we didn't get a follow-up when he was here, when he was in West Kelowna.
Yeah, that's our question. We were going to ask that question. We thought somebody else would ask it, and apparently not. Right?
I mean, I really did as well. It's not. I'm not just saying that for the punchline. And Josh, the news director, we both said, yeah, they'll definitely ask that question. Unbelievable, isn't it?
And here's the most brilliant man on the planet, with some of the top companies in the world, has landed here in British Columbia. There, I guess he's there in Bella Coola. Apparently, they saying he's checking out an apocalypse bunker in Bella Coola. And instead of welcoming me here we have these people going after plane spotters and anti-capitalists, and opponents of the U.S. president got themselves in tizzy after tech magnate Elon Musk reportedly landed and said that if he's here looking for a bunker, that another reason to tax billionaires out of existence. There you go. That's the welcome to British Columbia, Elon.
Tax billionaires out of existence. I mean, do you think that's possible? Can Canada do that? Again, with this, like, as if Canada can change the world. It's a strange kind of arrogance almost, isn't it?
And then here's Rupa. Again, I think she writes for the National Post. The powerful image, any theories about America's declining hegemony should be put to rest. Trump is surely restoring the country to its rightful place. And there you go. It's definitely a powerful image for the United States of America.
what is America's rightful place? Quite a strange comment to make. I don't really know what it is.
Well,
but clearly she knows.
Apparently, they're the ones that control the big stick. King Arthur would let you know what that stick looks like. Apparently, this is a story that was breaking. Putin launches massive aerial attack near the a couple of kilometers away from the Ukrainian Romanian border, and apparently they scrambled some German fighters to kind of make sure they didn't stray into NATO territory. So I know Putin seems to escalate as they get near peace. So he's just trying. I don't know, like Trump said that once. He said, like, I thought we were close to a peace deal, and next thing you know, he unloads everything he has. And the same thing with Israel when they did that, or Iran when they were working on that truce there, or whatever, that the end of the Iran conflict there, that the Israelis went out there and unloaded everything they had.
Mm. On the Putin thing, though, it reminds me of an excellent Norm Macdonald joke. I don't know if you're familiar with it, where he talks about Hitler, and he goes, you know, this guy's a real jerk. It's kind of, that's how I feel about Putin at this point. It's like, you know, death by understatement there. He is one particularly filthy human being, isn't he? He's an absolutely repulsive toad.
That's our show for today. That's a thing. But again, what our theme for today was the Canadian reality versus the liberal messaging. And I guess in the comments you can tell us from what the liberals say that Canada is the clean energy superpower. Canada is the best nation and the most. What do they say all the time? That Canada will be the greatest economy in the G7.
Yeah, fastest growing, I think, at least.
So, I don't know. What's your reality? Is it anywhere near that?
It doesn't really look like it, does it? I think, you know, looking at the things like the capital flight or the investment figures, and then looking at the bankruptcies, you know, this is the hard data, isn't it? These are the real numbers. These are the real things that matter. And nothing in that department looks good, really. And then another one would be to look at the deficit, look at the amount of
budget.
Look at the amount of money that the federal government is. Well, we can't look at the budget, can we? But look at the amount of money that federal government is borrowing, the deficit between spend and.
But we do have breaking news. You did announce
revenue.
Today. Breaking news. We have an announcement of the announcements that are pending announcing. So there is that.
But I mean, in that case, I guess there's no emergency, is there? Just like Parliament still on holiday. They've still got another couple of weeks, 3 weeks, I think, to just lounge about and do nothing.
How about a fair media in Canada where they actually go after, like, they're just for the Alex Saladukas out there, there's a lot of meat on the bone with Patty Hadju right there. 3 hours into a strike, she invokes Section 107. 3 hours into a strike, she invokes Section 107. 3 hours. Like, there's a lot of meat on that bone. Melanie and Joly, like what she said there. Where's the canola thing? And who's asking the question of Mark Carney on the BC ferries? I think she writes for the National Post. Somebody said that she does not work. I think she writes I think she writes an opinion piece for the Post. I'm sure she has.
Yeah, I've seen her. That's the only place I've ever seen her.
All right, that's our show for today. We're back tomorrow morning, and we thank you for watching. We hope you share it, comment, share it, because I mean, the only way for us to get this out more, the people that enjoy it, the only way for us to get it out to a bigger audience, because Bill C-18 took away our audience of 200,000 that we earned serving this community. They took that away, and so we try to explore other channels. We never spent a lot of energy on YouTube, but now we are. So if you could share it, like, subscribe, and share it with friends that you know that you think would like this better. Oh, she used to work for the National Post. There you go. I think she might be an independent right now. We're going to start that, the Independent Canadian News Network, ICNN. There you go. I'm being serious too. So anyway, enjoy your day, and thank you for watching Now Media.
We don't just report the news. We live here too. We're your neighbors, bringing you stories that matter to all of us.